The book of Genesis. Last week. Come on. Be nice. Last week we talked about the foundation of being unequally yoked with the lines of Seth and Cain and how they were crossing over and how that did not make God happy. We examined the righteous line of Seth and how the people were marrying across those lines into the worldly lines of Cain, and how that was referred to by the sons of God and the daughters of man in the Bible. We talked about the fallen angels and how that was referring to the righteous men of the line of Seth and how they had fallen from grace by their behavior. We talked about how marriage was no longer a godly act, but that men were marrying women solely because of their outside beauty and sex appeal. It wasn't about reverence to God. It wasn't about being loyal. It was about the desires of the flesh. We talked about the increasing sexual immorality going on, and then we also started talking about the wickedness. The Bible started to talk about the giants of men, warriors, and gladiators who were abnormally large, standing 8, 9, 10 feet tall or taller. We talked about how notorious they were for their ruthlessness and that they were extremely violent men. That's my best friend right there. We talked about how that grieved God. We talked about how the Bible uses the word repent. And how we talked about how the world would look at that and say that God repented because he made a mistake. And that we discussed and that we know God doesn't make mistakes.
No.
And that the word repent is that it grieved his heart to look at creation acting the way that they did. Yes. Chapter 6, yes.
Yeah.
So he was not apologizing, but he was saddened. He had grief in his heart that his creation had turned into such wickedness and that they weren't having the relationship with him that he had intended. He was filled with sorrow that man had committed spiritual adultery in their relationship with him and began to serve darkness. And now we pick up where we left off, which was chapter 6 and verse 7. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast and the creeping thing and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. Our word study starts with destroy, and the Hebrew for destroy is machah, and it means to wipe out, to blot out or obliterate, to exterminate. Moses reports in the first 4 words there that the Lord said. The Lord hath said. That means he decreed, he declared. He was not wishy-washy on the subject. He declared that he had had enough and that he was going to destroy the creation that is causing him so much grief and sadness and grief. He was grieving. But then he goes on to say that he is going to destroy beast and the creepy thing and everything that flies in the air. And my question to you is why? You see, he says that he was hurt that he made them. Why? Why is he going to destroy the beasts and the plants and everything that including the Garden of Eden, which is perfect, as we discussed. He's decreed that everything has to go, minus the righteous man and Noah. Why?
Sin has to go too.
In God's eyes, everything had been defiled.
Right.
Matthew chapter 24, verse 37 and 39. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be.
Right, yeah.
The event called the flood should be studied intensely, because it will repeat itself. History will repeat itself. There will be another reckoning. There will be another erase, if you will. And the reason that I ask you the question, why? Why did he kill the beasts and the fowl and the trees, and he destroyed everything? It was a complete, except for Noah and all of the animals that he brought onto and the agriculture that was also brought onto the ark. He destroyed everything. So I'm going to say that a number of times. He destroyed everything. Just know that I know, we all know, he saved Noah and okay.
Yeah.
So we know that. But everything else he destroyed. My question is, why? Well, let's go on to verse 7 first. Or actually, let's do this. 8, 9, and 10. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was just a man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. Now, that's the second time that we've heard that.
Yeah.
The first time was with Enoch. Walked with God.
Enoch, yeah.
This is now the second time. Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Noah, as we talked about in chapter 5, means rest. Grace is pronounced hain, and it means favor. It can mean grace, charm, elegance, and acceptance. Just is tzaddik, and it means justful, lawful, righteous, correct, upright. Perfect is tamim, and it means complete or whole, entire. It means sound and healthy. Shem, as we discussed earlier, is pronounced shame, and it means name. Ham is pronounced ham, and it means hot. And we always pronounce that J, but it's actually Yefet is how that's pronounced, and it means open. And so we see in verse 8, I'm still don't want you to lose sight of that. I asked the question, why is he destroying everything? Because this is important. Okay, why did he destroy cows and dogs and birds and all of that? Okay, but the answer is coming. We see in verse 8 that Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. In a world that was filled with sin, that was so bad that it brought God to the point where he needed to destroy it. It means Noah being found to have grace was significant. And it's a part of the answer, by the way, to the question. Okay? That's significant. That Noah, amongst everyone, was the only one that God found enough favor in to save. He was the only one that was having the relationship with God as it was intended to be from the very beginning. If you recall, God had told Satan that he would be crushed. I'm sorry, let me back up. I want to go back to the things that Brother Cletus has said on a number of occasions, because here is where we start seeing it to be very important. Okay, we cannot forget that when God issued the consequence to the serpent, i.e. Satan, he said that the seed of Eve would crush Satan. If there wasn't a single righteous man on the planet, then God would destroy everybody. And if God would destroy everybody, then that would wipe out what he just said. That would make him a liar. Because if he wiped everybody out, there's no seed from Eve to continue on. He would have to create something else, and thus it would be no seed. But when he punished that serpent, he said, the seed of this woman will crush you. So there had to be, as a part of his perfect plan, there had to be that linchpin. There had to be something that held together post and pre-flood, that continued the seed line. And Noah, again coming from the line of Seth, as the righteous line. So this is important that among all of what is going on, Noah has kept himself separate from everything else to the point where he's the only one. Now that's also relevant because when we look at where we are today, we have this tendency as human beings that have feelings to not stand up and say something that's right because we're afraid of how we're going to be judged or treated by the rest of the world. It's called missing a backbone. If we would just, I'm just going to speak it. That's not having a backbone. Okay? Imagine, but you can still come to church and we're surrounded by brothers and sisters who are like-minded, and we get revitalized to go back out into the world and deal with evil, but we have family. And we know each other's phone numbers. We talk to each other on Facebook. In 2013, there's a lot of ways to communicate. And when we're feeling down, when we're feeling beat up, we can talk to each other. Okay? But imagine that you are the only person on the planet that believes in God.
Yeah.
How hard is it for you to maintain your Christian life? When you read through the flood, did you ever consider that with Noah? We have a support system. Noah had nothing. And yet he maintained a righteous life.
Yeah.
He was the only. This is significant. Don't read through it like a romance novel. Stop and think about this, because when you're at a point where you're sitting there wondering, should I say something or should I not? Hey, we talk about Job. Whenever we have our trials, whenever we're going through a hard patch, we sit there and say, it's the trials of Job. You know, we remember him. We get support from him when we're going through hard times. When we're dealing with a world full of sinners and we're wondering, should I say something? Should I not? Should I just go ahead and partake and, you know, I'll pray about it and I'll ask for forgiveness later. How about we remember Noah? How about we take some time to remember that of all that stuff that was going on back then, Noah kept separate. And that's part of my answer as to why did he kill the beast and the fowls, and because this is important.
Because, remember brother said, God knew, Noah walked with God. He wasn't perfect. But he walked with God. He wasn't perfect.
Well, neither was Enoch. But they both maintained that relationship that God intended us to have. He never intended us to be alone.
But from Noah would come the son that would carry the seed, which is Shem.
Shem, yeah.
Shem that would crush the head of the serpent.
Yeah.
Eventually.
If you remember, we talked about why is Shem, who is actually not the oldest, listed first of the three. You remember we talked about in those days, and still today, the Jewish people give a lot to the firstborn. There is a birthright to the firstborn, which is something else that when we get to the people part of the book of Genesis, we're going to learn that God really doesn't care about who was born first. It's about who does what I ask them to do. Who is the most obedient to me? That's what he cares about, because he's going to use a lot of seconds and thirds. And hello, guess what? Today in the church house, you know what he uses? He uses broken people. Ain't none of us perfect. We're all broken. But by his grace and his mercy, he puts us back together, and we are brand new. Brand spanking new. It's better than any super glue that is on the market. He puts you back together, and then He uses you. And then you have what's called a testimony. Because then you can witness. If you were perfect, then you would be the example. We've had one of those. We had a perfect example. Now we should all have testimonies. That's our job, is to share our testimonies. So again, again, brother, Shem not being the oldest, but he's listed first because he is the seed that produces down the line the seed in Mary, who then produces the seed called Jesus Christ. That's why he's first in line. So it's not birth, it's importance. I want to make sure. I also want to draw attention to the fact that Noah's name in verse 9, how many times is that used? How many times is his name used in verse 9?
There's 3 there.
3. Which in the Bible is a complete number. It refers to perfectness. His generation was perfect. He had 3 sons. That's it. We don't know anything else. They had wives, but we know he's got 3 sons. There's significance in that. There's nothing insignificant about what's written in the Bible. So we look at the fact that he had 3 sons, which is, you look at the word at 3, there's so many, 3 days, the 3 weeks, 3 months, everything. If you notice throughout the Bible, things happen in 3s. I went to start to list them, but there was just so many. I didn't want to leave any out. And it would have took us days to get through, the 3s. I'll give you one. Perfect example of the completeness of 3. The Trinity. 3. Complete. And perfect. So, we talked about that and Shem's name being first. Any questions? Okay. 11. The earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Okay, are you still thinking about my question? Why is he going to destroy the earth? Right? Why is he going to destroy it? All right. Word study, corrupt. Shahat is the Hebrew, and it means to destroy. Corrupt, to go to ruin, decay, to be marred, be spoiled, to be corrupted. Violence is, and you're going to really like this. Would you see? Can you read how that sounds? Hamas. It's Hamas, and it means violence. Let's connect the dots on that one. Flesh is basar, and it means flesh. In this particular, if you recall, in previous verses, we talked about the original word meaning flesh, meaning sinfulness. Here, where he's actually using this word, basar, and he's talking about man. He's talking about the physical flesh. You are corrupting the earth. He's talking about the person. Filled with is mahale, and it means to fill, be full, fullness and abundance. Them is panim, and it means face, faces, presence, and persons. So what we are here in verse 11 is that the world is so corrupt that the world has gone in such a state of ruin and decay, spoilage. It's so fractured and rotten and filled with violence that God has to get rid of it. All of it. He's decided he's getting rid of everything. We talked previously about sexual immorality when the lines of Seth crossed over with the lines of Cain, and men were marrying women not because of their loyalty to God versus sanctity of marriage, but rather because of the delightfulness of the beauty of the women on their eyes. But now we see, in talking about the giants and the hostility and the violence that's present on the face of the earth, we have to ask the question, what's the difference between then and now? I mean, I think the world is a pretty violent place.
Absolutely, yeah.
We got people killing, and you know what, and I'm sure one day we look forward to studying the book of Revelations in the end times, but Randy and I were talking about this. I'm listening to a number of preachers and sermons, and they're talking about the end times, and they asked the question, if you look at the book of Revelations, it talks about the European nations coming together with one world leader and one world order, and people want to know, well, where does the United States fit into that? And that comes from a person who sees the United States today as a superpower. If we're a superpower, you can want to kind of know, where does the United States fit into that? Because we're not a part of the European nations. We're not over there. All of this is happening over there, not over here. And so Dr. David Jeremiah, as one, he gave three things. He says, first of all, and I hope I remember all three of them, but he was like, first of all, it could be that we're wrapped up in it under another nation. Maybe, you know, we let Europe, England, whatever, we're in it, but we're not like a primary leader. The second thing, which he said that could be an answer, but he doubted it. He said the second reason is because, I can't remember what I told you. There was a second reason. But the third reason that he got to was we're no longer a superpower. By the time this happens, he's like, if you look at all of the nations and how old they are, they have survived a lot longer than us. We're only 200 and some years old. And we are already in a state of ruin. We're on our way down. And it only took us 200 and some odd years to get there. The nations over there have been around for tens of thousands of years. And they're still going. So he's saying, you want to know why the Bible doesn't talk about America? Consider the fact that we implode. And that by the time all of this takes place, we're not even a player in the game. We're not a superpower anymore. We're not financially secure. We don't have the greatest army or military in the world. And can I tell you that when we start letting pieces of our own country go to another religion like Islam, and we start losing pieces of where Americans can't even go anymore, I think I like his answer number 3. Because I don't know how you think you're going to survive. We're not a player in the game because we're not going to be the same as we are now. And we're going to implode. Yes. And I'll tell you that he also said, you want to know what the secret to not imploding is look at how all those other nations stayed around for so long. They have their belief and they've stuck to it. And you are not going to tell them they can't have it. We had a belief when we came here, and we were blessed by God. We prospered abundantly. We became a world power because of the Industrial Revolution and prayer. We became what we are because of God. We start turning our back on God, and all of a sudden, we're not manufacturing it. We are not an industrial revolution. We're not an industrial country anymore. We're not making anything. We're not doing anything except getting fat and playing video games. I'm sorry, brother. I had to keep it.
All right.
I'm not talking about you've earned that belly, brother. I ain't talking about you.
The nation that forgets God will fall.
Yes.
Period.
All right. So we know that God is looking upon the earth, and we know that He is not. He can see everything. So He's sitting there wherever He's at, and He's observing, and He sees the sexual immorality, and He sees all of the violence, and He sees that there's only one person that He can, that He still has a relationship with in Noah. People are still trying to hide from Him, and we see here He's talking about for all flesh, but He's talking about man, and the earth was corrupt, for all man had corrupted it in his way upon the earth. And so He's lumping God, man, and animal. He's talking about all flesh is bad. He's saying that the behavior that He is witnessing, where man, our behaviors towards each other is bestial. Yes, that's a word. We're no better than the beasts. We're devouring each other like beasts devour their prey. And He's not okay about it. So, and I still say to this day, this is me personally, that if anybody wants to see how things are meant to be, all you have to do is observe the beasts of the wild. We can say about, well, you know, there's equality this and equality that, and we can talk about tolerance, and we can all, but if you want to see what the design of God is, look at some wild animals and how they live. Believe it or not, their lives are structured. They have jobs. They don't cross their jobs.
They don't have free will.
No. Well, they don't. But that's what I'm saying. We can observe and say, look, this was instilled in them. They know what to do. If you recall, when we first started this, and I brought up that study where the birds, they come out, they were brought into a planetarium. And the stars were there. They come out of the egg. They weren't taught. They didn't go to school. They didn't learn anything about the constellation. But yet, they migrated according to the stars. It was implanted in them from the very beginning. They know what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
That is implanted in us too.
We should know what to do.
We do. We know what to do. We ignore it.
Yeah.
And sometimes we ignore it for so long that we are actually lost. You talk to people who just don't get it. And I've used Charles Manson as an example. Because when Charles Manson was born, he was not Charles Manson. He was a baby. And he was born with everything that we were born with. But somewhere along the line, he received a lot of filth. To the point where he believes he is Jesus Christ. He didn't come into this world thinking he was Jesus Christ. He came into this world with a soul that was given to him by God. An inherent need for the Heavenly Father, just like we all have. The inherent need to have a relationship with God. Because, don't forget, because of Noah, that linchpin still exists that connects us to Adam and Eve. We are descendants of Adam and Eve. So that means that that breath that God gave Adam, He has given to us. We have the soul. We have that thing that drives us to have a relationship with God. So did Charles Manson. But it was the world that corrupted him. Go ahead, brother.
And the blood also.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
have that blood, we have that, we still have that Adam blood, that same blood that Adam had. We have it. Every human being has that blood.
Yeah, they've proven that with each.
The
Whatever.
blood,
You
you know, the DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can change, I mean, but we still have that Adam blood. We still have that Adam flesh.
Yeah.
That Adam body.
We have a sinful body.
Right.
Yes.
And my point is, we as human beings make excuses for a lot of the things that we do. Whereas if you observe the wild, they can't make excuses. They have to do what they have to do. I mean, if you want to look at a lion and a lioness. If I was a lioness, I don't think I would be happy. I don't think I would be happy. She does more work than the lion.
Yeah.
Just so you know. And the lion is the king of the jungle. The only thing that the lions really do is fight over who's going to get the lioness. That's what they do.
Who's gonna get the most to eat?
The lioness goes out and the lioness hunts. The lioness provides for the cubs. The lioness has the cubs. The lioness does the work,
Yeah.
but she is not able to complain, and she does it anyway. Yeah. We complain. When we feel like work isn't fair, or that the responsibilities are uneven, let's complain about it. Because I'm not okay with it. Go ahead.
The work thing with the lion and the lioness is a good example, and I fully follow what you're saying. But that's the roles.
That's the rules.
The lioness and the lion.
Yep.
We don't just complain about the roles, we just decide we're not gonna do those roles
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. Or we change roles.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. In today's country.
I'm looking at the man who was in the army that gave away those secrets, and now he wants the United States government to pay for a sex change.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I don't think so. I mean, this is where we are, you know?
I like the Army's response to that. Leavenworth doesn't offer a formal treatment.
Right, that's exactly what so God is telling Noah that he's going to destroy man and the earth because of all the vileness, sinfulness of the man. And so I got to thinking, and here's the question, this is why I'm asking. I got to thinking, on the day that it started raining, and the water started rising, there was a cow out in the pasture chewing on her cud, right? There was a domesticated dog being a domesticated dog. There was a rat somewhere just being a rat. There was sheep being sheep. There were blades of grass growing, not bothering anybody. There was a tree growing. There was vegetables growing. There was all kinds of stuff growing. And they're in, like you said, they don't have free will, and they don't have souls, so they just do what they do, and that's it. So I was like, that kind of makes them innocent. Why would God kill them? They didn't do anything. And then I started thinking about this, and before I continue, I have talked to the pastor, so I'm not presenting anything to you that he doesn't agree with. But I'm the book of Genesis is a foundational book.
Yeah.
We've talked about a foundation for a lot of things. And my question is, why did he have to kill the beasts and the fowls and the vegetation and all of that? Why did he have to do that? And I've pretty much answered it already. Anybody want to take a stab? Not you.
Take a stand.
Noah couldn't build a boat big enough to hold all that.
They were defiled, they were sacrificed, what? That's my two guesses.
They were defiled.
All flesh had corrupted.
What I'm seeing is the foundation here for separation. The evil that was in man seeped from the bottom of their feet into the earth. Every cattle, every dog, you had a shepherd. Man was in charge of earth from the very beginning. That was a charge. Remember when that was something we were supposed to do. We were supposed to take care of the earth, and we were supposed to take care of all the beasts. They're under our charge. Well, the colonel is not a good colonel. He's done some things that is wrong, and because of his disease, everything under him has a disease. Our sin seeps out of us and seeps into everything we touch. Our wrongness seeps into everything that we touch. And I'm going to tell you that the reason that I talked to the pastor about this is because I read on some pretty highfalutin scholars. when I do these things. I want to know what their opinions are. I don't come up with this stuff on my own, and I read a number of them. And none of them come up with this as being the foundation of separation. But I challenge you to not connect the dots here. Beasts and fowls, everything that we were in charge of, had to be destroyed because of us. Because of our sin. And Noah was not. And there's a foundational lesson there that says, stay away from it. If you stay away from it, I'll save you. If you obey me, I will save you. But if you engage in it, I will destroy you. For us, that destruction is going to come on the day of judgment. There won't be another flood.
Oh,
But here is a very clear separation. The only people that got on that ark was Noah. And Noah was righteous. He didn't save anybody else. And because of our behavior, everything was touched. See, there's a lot of people that think, the reason that I'm bringing this up is because there's a lot of people that think that as a Christian, you can go out into this world and participate in certain things and be okay. And what I'm trying to tell you is that that's not true. Rust corrupts. And it seeps into you. You think you can go out there and you can be impervious to it when you can't. It didn't save the cows. The cows can't even speak.
Connect to the internet.
They can't do anything.
no.
And God killed them. 1 minute, I'm just sitting there grazing in the field. The next minute, I'm drowning. I mean, we know that they feel pain. We know that they have hearts. We know they are living, bleeding animals. You know, some of us love some pretty weird animals, but I mean, we care about them. They're real things. Some of us consider our pets as family members. It's not insignificant at all that we should be reading this. You should look at this and say, you know, if God intended to kill everything because man corrupted it, then I need to do something while I'm out here in this world and stop thinking that I can participate. You know, there's and I have an example of what I'm talking about. I have a neighbor lady who's a Christian, professed Christian. I don't know the nature of her salvation. She says she is. I believe her. Okay, she goes to the First Baptist Church of Medina. Okay, and she does a lot of work. I mean, you can see her. You can see Christ in her because she does a lot of work. She does a lot of volunteering. She rallies her women's groups to do collections and give it to the battered women's shelter. She does a lot of work. She takes in stray kids, not pets, kids, in her home. Feeds them, clothes them. She does all of that. But then I see her go to a specific house who I know is not a Christian. And they advertise that they're not a Christian. They advertise it in their love for just about everything that is dark. I mean, when it comes Halloween season, you know what side of the fence they're on because, boy, do they worship the devil. And you will find my neighbor lady during the summer swimming in their pond, attending their barbecues. She's not witnessing. She's partaking. And I'm trying to tell her that filth is seeping into you. You doing that gives Satan the opportunity to drive that wedge. You're giving him a crack in your armor.
Yeah.
And if you keep on doing it, your armor is going to split wide open one day. Because guess what? You're flesh, just like they are. And you're going to fall. Go ahead.
Obviously, we've had this conversation. The one thing I wanted to point out, and we may have went there anyways, but a lot of people will say, well, wait a minute, you know, Christ, they hated and despised him because he ate with the sinners and the tax collectors and stuff like that. And what I said to Mike when we were talking about this, I said, yes, I said, but remember, he surrounded himself with who? The 12. And he went there and he witnessed, and then he left. He didn't keep going back to partake in the sinful nature of what was going on. And lastly, I'll say to you, if that doesn't convince somebody when they say that, then just say, yeah, whatever you want to say, he was Jesus Christ. He was perfect. It wasn't going to happen to him.
Yeah.
You cannot compare what Jesus did to what you did. You know you're supposed to witness like he did, but you can't use that particular sets of scriptures as your reasoning for saying, well, I can go and I can, you know, I can hang out and do the things like your example is, and think that you aren't going to fall prey to that stuff if you keep participating in it.
Yeah. We look at the lines of Seth up until the time where the only righteous man was Noah, and we can see that there's a foundation for apostasy. You had grace, the line was good, but you fell. You fell from grace. And you can see here that on this day, on the flood, no one was saved. There was more people in that line of Seth that was a righteous line, but you fell and you weren't saved. He didn't save you. You died, and you were done.
Yeah.
So, we see that we're going through the foundations, and the reason that I wanted to preface my remarks is because I have seen nowhere where we call this the foundation of separation. But we did study in the book of James where we did talk about the two characteristics of a Christian are service and separation. If you're going to call yourself a Christian, you need to be doing those two, because those are characteristics of a Christian. Service and separation. And this, I think, is fair to say is the foundation of separation. To the point where, for those who were not separate from the world, they died. The only one person who was separate was Noah, and he was saved. And in that is the story of Jesus Christ. If you're in Jesus, if you're in the blood, you're saved. If you're not, you're not. There's no lukewarmness, there's no ins and outs, which is another thing that I'm trying to tell my... Listen, here's the thing. This is a picture of God sitting on his throne looking down on us and making the judgment that this world is evil. I don't know how many people that were the descendants of Seth that thought they were Christians. What I know is that only one was saved. I don't know how many of them thought that, well, I'm from the line of Seth, I'm good to go. Well, I went to the altar when I was 9 and I'm good to go, so now I can go and do whatever I want to do. That didn't save the cows, that's not saving you. Go ahead.
At that time, I think, the head of the house, he sacrificed for his whole family, and he done it. That's the reason why he saved the 3 sons.
Mm-hmm.
Did I get ahead of you?
No.
Good.
No. The only I'm going to stop here. But the only thing I wanted to share is that I look at it like rust. Rust will spread slowly, and it will slowly destroy the metal to the point where it just crumbles away into dust. You put yourself out there for any other purpose than to do God's glory,
Yeah.
you're going to get some rust on you. So, separation. All right. We will be back in